beyond the skies. You and I, we're breaking bounds on Baobab.
Welcome, welcome. So, I'm just looking. Our participants, awesome. We have 47 people. Mercy from Kenya, welcome from Abuja. Someone from Kigali, Rwanda, our guest panelist. Thank you. I'm here from Connecticut in the United States. Super, super, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today here. Wonderful to see you all here. Wonderful, wonderful, awesome. She's Beninese but she's joining from Senegal. Thank you, thank you. All right, and we have our participants. Awesome. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get started with our program today. And our theme today is talking about, and I'm going to turn my chat on. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to put them in chat and also in the Q&A section. Good. Can you all see my screen now? Good. So the theme is talking about prioritizing self-care for a fresh start in 2025. And we thought this was a really important theme. And we have a poll. And we're going to start the poll for you. And we're going to launch them. We're going to launch our first poll. We're wondering, have you made any New Year's resolutions this year? If you could answer in the poll yes or no, can you all see the poll? There we go, awesome. And if you did, in what area did you make the New Year's resolution? Was it related to health or finances or family? Thank you all so much for participating. Good, so we're seeing, so many of you are saying yes, you have, excellent. I know I made some New Year's resolutions related to health and finances myself, and for family to spend more time with my mother. Awesome, thank you all so much. And then indicate also on a scale of 1 to 10 if the New Year's is stressful for you, because that is our theme. Where, right? So looking at what area were they related to, and if it was stressful, where 1 is not stressful and 10 is very stressful. We'll give you all a couple more minutes to respond, and then we'll share with you our poll results. Awesome, so all but 1 person here has, so most of you have done this, and it looks like our number 1 area is finances and then health. And the majority of saying it's not that stressful, but maybe for some of you a little bit stressful. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results so you can see this. Interesting results. And I'm going to stop sharing. Very good, you guys. So, so we have here with us today, we have Solid Minds is with us today. Solid Minds is with us. They are a private, independent outpatient mental health clinic located in Rwanda. They're licensed by the Rwandan Ministry of Health. They provide excellent evidence-based psychological services to individuals, couples, families, and children. And they have a wide range of programs. You can learn more about this. We will be providing the PowerPoint on the Baobab chat, and there will be a copy of the recording shared with people. All right, so Solid Minds, we're partnering with them today to help us address this topic of mental health. Our guest today from Solid Minds is Nadiya Tucker. She's a Senior Regional Manager of Strategy and Partnerships at Solid Minds Counseling Clinic. She's leading a student mental health project for universities across sub-Saharan Africa. Her experience includes working for the Peace Corps in Kenya, where she was a community health volunteer, and she has her master's degree in social work. She has more than 7 years of experience providing direct clinical services to university students. So she's an expert in this. If you all have any questions related to mental health, especially as being a university student or a recent university student, she's the one to talk. Her areas of expertise include individual therapy, group therapy, case management, outreach, crisis intervention, and training and supervision. She works through a multicultural lens using short-term solution-focused skills-based approach. And she employs principles of cognitive behavior therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and motivational interviewing and crisis intervention. And she lives in Rwanda. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So we have our introduction. We're going to have a brief overview of mental health trends related to New Year's resolutions, our theme. We're going to have voices from the field, which is going to be from a MasterCard alumni fellow and a current MasterCard scholar. Then we're going to hand the reins over to Nadiya, and she's going to share with us strategies for coping with stress and stress related to these New Year resolutions and getting started for the new year. And then there'll be lots of time for question and answer. So some group rules, mute yourself when not speaking. To participate, raise your hand or use the chat emojis. Listen to each other, don't hesitate to ask questions, and of course participate. And there we go. Alrighty, that's what I want. I got all my attendees there. Good. All right. So our theme, navigating new year, new you, and new goals and regrets, right? So New Year can be stressful. Overall, in general, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health challenge in their lives. Looking at the new year, it's very common to feel depression from reflecting on past challenges and setbacks, goals you set that you didn't achieve or hard times you had. You may have people may have feelings of disappointment or failure from things they had hoped to achieve, but they didn't. Sometimes there's a post-holiday emotional come down where the holidays are so exciting, and then after the holidays, everyone goes home and it feels a little empty. Um, Give me a response in the chat if you can relate to any of this of feeling sad after the festive season ends. Anyone relate to this? You can give me a sign in chat. Give me a thumbs up if you can relate to this. I'm going to pull open my chat box. Anyone relate to this? I know I do. The holidays are so much fun, and then all of a sudden, everyone goes home, or either you're home for the holidays and then you go back to school and you miss your family, you're a little homesick. I think those feelings are really, really common. All right, thank you so much, Mercy. Um, so looking at some general stats about mental health in trends in the new year, 38% of people experience declining mood. So if you feel that way, know you're not alone. Anxiety levels are particularly high around the new year, and people tend to report concerns about personal finances, uncertainty about the next year, physical health, and mental health. Right? So it's very, very common, and we see those trends there. Interestingly, in 2025, 33% of people made mental health related New Year's resolutions. That's an increase from previous years. So it seems like people are starting to become more aware of the importance of mental health and their willingness to address it. If you can relate to this, give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let us know if this seems to ring true for you. Awesome. All right. So we have some voices from the field. Since we can't interview all of you, we would like we'd like Ibrahim. I'm going to bring Ibrahim in. He can unmute himself. And Victorine, if you can, I'm going to stop share. And if you can bring Ibrahim into the focus.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
Ibrahim, hi, how are you?
hi, how are you doing? It's good to be here, and yeah, I'm excited about this one also to just hi Victorine, hi Kelvin, hi Nadia.
Thank you so much. So, Ibrahim, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you're a former MasterCard Foundation. You're alumni, right? You're an
Yes, yeah.
alumni. Oh, look at that. Awesome. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you study? What did you major in? And when did you graduate?
Yeah, sure. Interesting. I studied at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, and my major was in rural community development or Master of Sciences in Rural Community Development. And I finished in January 2020 before the peak of COVID. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
yeah. Currently I'm a mental health and well-being life coach with the Scholars Program at American University of Beirut, but also I do work as a senior research specialist. We currently had a US project, so again, there is a 90-day freeze, so we know what that means. But yeah, that's basically what I did.
Oh, awesome. So we invited you. We're hoping that you can share us kind of the perspective of what you're hearing from some of your fellow alumni. Um, are you and your fellow alumni, is there a trend of making New Year's resolutions, and is there a trend of like in what area that tends to be?
Yes, that is a very interesting question. I think everybody that I know in my circle really has this this sentiment to make New Year resolutions. The first of all is just like you see it on social media. I think the first one is just New Year, new resolutions, new you. Let's get in shape. There is this term called unbig my back. Just get those calories popping, go to the gym. And mostly also when you just look at the sentiment of so most scholars that I know for sure, and because we also come from certainly some poor backgrounds, and we have rise to this level, there is a that you need to, for instance, let's say it could be in my case, but also the cases of what I've realized of, for instance, getting a job. For this suddenly, like right now, my mother still doesn't know what I do. Sometimes I have to just kind of explain because, like, oh yeah, you're doing a job. It's online. Oh, you're sitting at home. So, like, what is that? So most African parents, if you were working online, they don't understand if that is a job. And also, it really relates with certainly some of the students that I talk to, even though they are not alumni, is that if when they were working from home, I mean, studying from home, that can also, African parents don't, I think, really think that you are studying, you're seated on your computer studying, if you're living with them. So again, it just kind of have to be an explanation. So I think there is that. It's like, oh, you haven't gotten a job. Oh, you're working. It's not like a real job that is out there. And yes,
That that
suddenly.
that can be really stressful where you're working really hard but it doesn't look to your family like you're working, and they're saying, "What are you doing?"
I mean, yeah, there is sense like, okay, let's pray on it. And also when you get mostly like Saturday South African parents, if you're stressed, they will say to you, you know what, just go sleep, go pray, and those are like really short-term fixes. So again, when I moved from South Africa, I think in 2023, with my fellowship ended. So it's like, oh, so okay. Oh, what are you going to be doing? Let's pray. So there was that worry that came up because like you didn't have a real job, and a real job means that you're going to an office, you're reporting, doing 9 to 5. They don't really understand things have changed, and yeah, African parents can be too much. Sometimes, they are like the job keepers, they're like the micromanagers. at home. But
And
also,
so,
I think the other aspect that I've seen is in terms of the stresses is what have you done in the new year? For instance, oh, are you going to get married? If you're like, you're in the age bracket, like, are you going to buy a house? For instance, they say like, there's that pressure that also just comes in like, oh yeah, you need to get land, you need to buy a house. And, suddenly people who are just like in the villages, they don't even have this grand education that you have. You have a master's, they have just achieved something. Maybe they have a plot of land, they've just put up a house, bricks and what. It's poor managed, like built, but again, it's a house and then you don't have it. So equally, there is that comparison of like, yeah, somebody who's not educated has managed to buy a plot of you have nothing. Like, who are you? So with all this education that you've acquired, where are you in society? So it can be a lot. It can be a lot. Yeah.
and that stress can increase in the new year, because in the new year they're doing that kind of assessment of what have you achieved, what are you going to do in the new year. So I think a lot of people can really relate to this.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And also um, now, depending on where you are, suddenly is that after education, once there is that expectation as your Mastercard Foundation scholar, you've gotten this opportunity, and maybe you've gotten that stipend, and suddenly there is kind of like a roles reversal that happens in households. So the new year comes also with this expectation. Okay, yeah, you've blown out of Christmas, you've just given them maybe the chicken and what a goat, everybody's feasted. And now the new year comes in, it's like, hello, school fees is knocking. Hello, like what, those phone calls. I think people understand even when you're staying in cities or villages, is that there are those phone calls that come from your siblings, come from the
Yeah,
house members that will just sit and like, yo, yeah, this is you're gonna get money out of the bag, so it can really be stressful
yeah,
sometimes. And just like there is also this, I think, this expectation which you're told that to whom much is given, much is expected, but I don't
yeah,
think it
yeah,
really emphasizes the core principle, the
right,
mental health burden that comes with that. Yeah.
right, right. Oh my God, so well put, so articulately put. Um, Thank you so much. I think Gloria may be having some technical problems. She's not able to come on, unfortunately. So, Ibrahim, I'm going to hand the floor over to Nadia, and Nadia will respond to some of the issues you raised and help us understand what are some strategies for coping. So, give me a second. I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. That was awesome, and I think people could really relate. All right. So our facilitator is Nadia. We introduced her before, and I'm going to hand the floor over to her. Awesome. And Victorine, I don't know if you can highlight Nadia in the screen, or I don't know if we can do a double screen of highlighting her and the PowerPoint.
Thank you,
All right.
Elizabeth. Thank you so much. And Ibrahim, thank you for sharing. I really enjoy, and as you were sharing, so many people saying, the stress of managing so many different things, the stress of managing expectations from academic and personal life, is real. And I think in probably different ways, each of you here, to sort of hold everything up in the personal, in the academic, in the professional. It's a tough ask, I think, for anyone. Um, and my hope today for our conversation today is to talk about, when I say mental health, what do I mean? It's to normalize sort of these experiences that are shared human experiences. It used to be, I think, both on the continent here and in North America and Europe, when we say mental health, the automatic assumption that most folks have severe illness, who need to be in a hospital, who need to be watched 24/7. That's not the mental health I'm talking about. And I'll sort of get into that a little bit more.
Okay, next one, next
But
slide.
my
There we
hope
go.
is to kind of make that connection with some conversations with you. I hope to move into some conversations with you about how we can cope, how we can think about strategies that work for you. Addressing these concerns is not a one size fit all, right? I'm sure, hopefully, most of you have folks in your life who you trust, who you may or may not have shared some of this with, but talking also about it's not a one size fit all. So let's start off with mental health. There was a definition that Elizabeth, if you
Got it.
go back, please. It's from the World Health Organization. Thank you so much. And I start a lot of these conversations with this definition because I think it really captures so well my conceptualization of mental health and being in this space and being, working in this space. And here it says it's a state of well-being where you realize your potential, you can cope with the normal stresses of life, and you can work productively and feel like you're part of a community. You feel a sense of belonging. Nowhere in this definition does it make a mention of a pathology, of a disease, of an illness, right? In fact, it actually names a challenge, it names challenges, and it says someone taking care of their mental health is able to cope with the challenges that come as a normal part of life. Challenge is a normal part of life. Now, of course, there's a spectrum where sometimes those challenges get too heavy for folks to be able to carry on their own, but this sort of up and down cycle is a part of life. This continuum, this image also, I think, does a really good job illustrating that for most of us, we can move along this spectrum. So we're not stagnant. At any different point in our lives, we can find ourselves in the green, feeling really positive and healthy. Things are going well. We feel connected to our family members, our friends, our community. The job is going well. Or we can have something going on that kind of moves us into the yellow, where we're Ibrahim spoke about maybe you've graduated and your family is asking, when are you getting married? When are you getting that house? You should be able to pay your school fees for your little siblings, so for your cousins, right? And maybe there's sort of the inability to really deal and manage with that. Any one of us can sort of move from this green space into this yellow space where we begin to struggle a little bit more. Does that mean that we are mentally ill? Does that mean that we should be pathologized? Absolutely not. You're having a normal reaction to a situation that's stressful. That makes you human, right? And then, of course, yes, there's a number of people and a number of the population that do suffer from severe mental illness. These are folks who've struggled for a long time, haven't sought help, and the longer they stay with some of these concerns, the more severe it becomes. And then, of course, these folks would need professional help for long term. But many of us may move from the green to the yellow and back. This is a very normal part of life. It's a normal part of life. And what I hope today for this conversation is that we can talk about when we are in this yellow, what kinds of things can we do to move us back into the green? We can go to the next slide, please. So as we talk about different aspects of life that impact our health or how distress impacts us, we can think about the fact that it impacts us in so many different ways, so many sort of different layers of our being. For some of us, that distress comes through in our bodies where we feel fatigue, headaches, maybe we want to sleep a lot, or maybe we can't sleep. Some of us can't stop worrying. Some of us, we carry our emotions on our shoulders, and if our friends know us, when we come in front of them, they can tell right away that something is happening. Some of us, our behaviors, maybe we used to be more social and now we're withdrawing. Maybe we can't sleep. Maybe we feel restless. So when you think about the impact of distress in general in our environment, it can impact you in all these different ways. And the key here is to know yourself and know how it impacts you. So when you begin to see these signs, they can be an indicator to you that, maybe I should stop and do something about this. So as we sort of go through this, I think what I would like to encourage the participants to do, and we can move into the next slide here, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Oh,
Next.
actually, that's another slide. So these are some of the signs and symptoms that you could look out for that have a direct connection to mental health distress. I mentioned earlier that for different people, it sort of comes into your body in different ways, either physically or mentally or emotionally or socially. These are some of the general signs that one might see when they are dealing with mental health distress. So sometimes feeling hopeless, withdrawing socially, again, doing something that is not what you typically do, right? So withdrawing socially when maybe you are a social person. Interactions or isolating yourself, poor sleep, poor eating, even substance abuse or alcohol abuse for some folks. So these are sort of general signs here. Again, all of these may not apply to all of you, but what I really want you to keep in mind and be aware of is to think about which one of these apply to me. Do I know myself enough to know that when I'm in distress, when I'm feeling mental health distress, this is what happens to my body, right? I think one of the key things here is to know yourself and know when those signs are coming up so you can do something about it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, I would like all the participants, if you can just take a moment right now, think about where you are right now, how you came into this session today, what happened in your day, what are you anticipating after this? What are the responsibilities you have after this? What do you need to do? What's on your checklist? What's on your mind right now? Are you feeling like there's a lot you still need to get done? Are you feeling, no, I'm feeling pretty good. I feel good to being here. I feel like I've done what I need to do and I'm present. Where are you right now? Let's sort of go into this experiential place and just take a moment right here, right now, and check in with yourself. Where are you right now? Where's your battery? Where's your emotional battery? On a scale of 1 to 6, with 1 being the lowest and 6 being the highest, please let us know in the chat where you are. Give us about a minute or so to kind of read through this and see where we are. Maybe you're struggling with what comes next. Maybe you're close to graduation, or maybe you've already graduated. So let's just take a moment here and okay. Let's look at the chat and see what's coming in. Okay, I see a lot of some 4s, some 5s, some 3s, some 4s. Okay, so I think folks in the room today are feeling pretty, I see 1, 2, okay, maybe someone who might be a little bit struggling there. I currently feel like I have so many things to do trying to catch up. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Beza. And it's just the start of the year, right? I see some 2s. Okay. So we're kind of all over, I think, here. There are folks who are somewhat on the struggling side, need a little bit more to rejuvenate them. And there are folks coming in feeling rejuvenated already, kind of 3, 4, 5s, between 3 and 4. Okay. Okay. As you kind of attach these numbers to your current state, something else that becomes really important is to think about what are the aspects of life that are influencing that number, right? We have to think about what is connecting to these numbers, and are we in a position to be able to modify or change some parts of that? I'm sure many of you have come across this saying about in any difficult or challenging situation, there are aspects that you can control, and then there are aspects that you can't control. So when we talk about these numbers, something else I would like to encourage you to do is to think about the specific scenarios that are connected to these numbers and how much influence or control you have over that. How much of that is out of your control? How much of it is in your control, right? And how can we begin to think about what aspects we can begin to shift so that our experience is different? Okay, so thank you to all of those who shared. And I hope you kind of keep that number in mind as we go through the rest of the talk today. So let's kind of move and shift into this conversation about coping strategies, how to cope with mental health distress. I mentioned earlier that coping strategies look different for different people. There's a key component here of really knowing yourself. And if you don't know enough about yourself, I think this might be a call to, at the start of the new year, I saw a lot. I think most of you set New Year's resolutions. Maybe your resolution here might be to dedicate time to self-awareness, to knowing yourself and knowing what kinds of strategies work for you. I can come and share with you what I do, but that might not work for you. You might be in a different context, different experience, different environment. So a key component here of coping is knowing what works for you. But before you get to that place, you need to be aware enough of yourself, who you are, what you like and what you don't like, what rejuvenates you and what doesn't rejuvenate you. Okay. So with the next slide here, Elizabeth, I would like to again call upon the participants in the middle of transition and challenges. We're in the new year. I don't know, where you're coming from in the past, what happened last year, what you're looking forward to, or what you're not looking forward to, what you're anticipating, but just kind of thinking about where you are now and your experiences. What usually rejuvenates you? What kind of puts back into your soul? We all know that there's spaces we can get into that take a lot out of us. Maybe there are those friends that take a lot out of us and they're friends that put back into us. So when you think about people, environments, activities that you can get into, what are those spaces that rejuvenate you emotionally and elevate your mood? And please, as you think about these, please share them in the chat box. I missed a comment here where Adengo says, sometimes keeping quiet doesn't mean that you're mentally distressed. It's just a habit. Absolutely. Adengo, this is where it's helpful to know yourself. If you're a reserved person and that's just who you are, then this is where it's important for your friends around to know this is just who this person is. There's nothing wrong. This is just their disposition, right? So this is where you know yourself and what your norms are. And when we start moving away from what our norms are, that's when you begin to consider what is happening in my life to move me away from my norm. If someone who's generally really quiet is all of a sudden talking a lot or sharing a lot, it would make me curious what's changed in their life, right? So when people begin to move away from their norms, I think that's a key sort of piece of beginning to notice something shifting in your life. So I see someone says, my baby girl, spending time with families and friends, my grandmother, listening to good music, achieving my goal, my family, spending time with grandmothers. Yes, grandmothers are awesome. Observation of my prayers. I'm sure like prayer and spirituality sort of putting you in a good space. Sharing experiences with close friends, rest, prayer, food. So it's so interesting that when I ask this question, folks can kind of readily put in what rejuvenates them, which makes me think that the folks in the room today are really self-aware. You've done a lot of work. So congratulations in knowing and being self-aware. My follow-up question is, when is the last time you engaged in these activities? When is the last time you engaged in some of these activities that rejuvenate you? Has it been a while? Was it yesterday? Was it the day before? I see thinking exercise. Okay, someone says in December, over the holidays, last night. because it was self-care day. I love it. I'm engaging now. Beza says, I love that. Again, I love that you all are so attuned to this. You know already what works for you. You know already what rejuvenates you, and it looks like you're practicing it. And as the year begins and things happen, expectations come, my hope for you is that you continue to engage in this way, that this continues to be a priority, right? Sometimes when life gets challenging, life gets overwhelming, one of the first things that go out the window is what? The activities that rejuvenate us, right? We feel the pressure of having to perform, of having to meet other people's expectations, so much so that we forget about the thing that gives us the fuel to keep going. So my hope for you, as you've already identified what these aspects of rejuvenation are for your life, is that as the year goes on, you are able to make this a priority and a standing part of your sort of daily walk through life. Okay, next slide, please, Elizabeth. So self-care, what is self-care? I sort of included this here, but you guys have already defined that. When I asked about what rejuvenated you, and you could all readily just name what it is, that is self-care. The thing that rejuvenates you, the thing that puts back into your soul instead of taking out. That is self-care. I think sort of stereotypically when folks say self-care and they think of bubble baths and a massage, that might work for some folks, but it doesn't work for everyone. Self-care is self-defined. You get to determine what self-care is for you. And it's an activity that you do to take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically. It should fit your needs, your lifestyle, your environment, and involves a self right into much of what you've shared with me today about what you all do to rejuvenate yourself. So that's really what self-care is. It's something that you choose to put back into your spirit and your soul. Okay. And it's not this thing that you just sort of do once in a while and you check off. Self-care, ideally, would be part of your routine, not this extra special thing. I think in order for self-care to have an impact, it has to be part of your routine. It can't be this thing that comes up every time a crisis comes up, right? Next slide, please. So here are some additional thoughts. I know you have some wonderful ideas there of how you've chosen to care for yourself and rejuvenate yourself. And some of these I think you've already noted, but connecting to soldiers, friends, families, facing the issue. This is a big one. Sometimes when we face challenges as people, we may have the tendency to want to shrink back and avoid or pretend it's not there or be in denial. Face the issue and go through it. That's a part of coping. Instead of having something sort of lingering in the back of your mind, you go through it and you face the issue. Exercising, healthy eating, faith. I think someone mentioned about daily prayers, taking a break and relaxing. Sometimes this is a really hard one, especially for people who are leaders, for people who much is expected from them, from family, from friends, from their environment, and you feel the pressure to always have to perform. But this is a big one, especially for folks who are leaders in their environments, in their communities. If you don't take a break and you don't put back in yourself, I think you all have heard the saying, if you don't put, you have nothing to pour out and give to other people, right? So it's this sort of counterintuitive thing of stopping and taking a break and I'm not being productive. But if you don't put back in yourself, you have less and less to give to the people around you. Being compassionate to yourself when you make mistakes, when things don't go as you expected, when you work really, really hard for that interview and you don't get the job, or you work really, really hard and you anticipate something and it doesn't happen. Be compassionate to yourself, right? Setting boundaries. This is a big one. Being able to know yourself enough to know where your lines lie. As human beings, yes, we can all be very giving, but we all have boundaries. They're They're lines that if we cross it, it becomes detrimental for us. Do you know what that line is for you? Have you discovered that line? Knowing that for yourself and being able to communicate that is an important part of coping. And finding and creating practices that make you feel good. When was the last time you stopped to explore something new, to try something new, to create a practice, a new practice that puts back into yourself? Okay. So this is, before I end the conversation here and opening up for question and answers, this is something I thought was really helpful and important, especially as we think about challenges that we may face coming up in this new year, or maybe challenges or disappointments coming from the last year and into this new year. A lot of times it's difficult for us to see ourselves as human beings, either quote unquote failing at something. We set a goal and we don't reach the goal, or we're not quite the versions of ourselves that we want to be. I love this first point here of embracing imperfection as an opportunity to grow, that failure is not the end, right? That imperfection and failure doesn't define all of who we are. It in fact just gives us the opportunity to become a better version of who we are. So keeping that mindset, doing the hard things, we mentioned that earlier, cultivating a mindset of hopeful thoughts versus negative thoughts. There's a whole body of research around positive psychology and the idea of being intentional about positive thoughts. It's a difference between I can do it and I don't think I'm capable of doing that, and realize the impact of those two statements in one's life. So making it a habit to cultivate positive thoughts. They won't make up for everything, and it certainly won't cure everything, but it certainly will make a difference if you tell yourself, I think I can do this, let me try, versus I'm not even going to try because I'm not capable of that. Okay. Being open to constructive feedback and surrounding yourself with people who you know have good intentions for you and will reflect honestly opportunities for growth. Sometimes we tend to take in feedback personally and make the feedback sort of embody it as if it's who we are. Being able to separate who you are and your mistakes is key. Being able to separate who you are and your failures is key, right? That failure and mistakes is a part of the human experience. It doesn't define who you are as a person. It defines a shared human experience. So being able to receive constructive feedback and separate that from who you are as a person, and not walk around sort of with this label at the top that here or didn't do this thing right. I separating that. That's not who you are. That's not who any of us are. All of us here have failed in different ways, right? And it doesn't define who we are. Cultivating relationships with people who help you grow. So being intentional about the people that you surround yourself with, right? Developing a love of learning new things, celebrating the small wins. Sometimes we have this grand goal that's, distance away, and we can't stop to see the little steps along the way, the little journeys along the way, and the small wins that get us to this bigger goal. Being able to stop and celebrate your small wins. Think about the past month. Think about the past 2-3 months. What have you done that you're proud of? Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Remember your small wins. Remember the moments where you achieved what you wanted. And even if you don't have what you want now, you can remember that you have the ability to get there, because you can remember moments when you did have small wins or big wins. But don't forget the small wins. They matter. Okay. So, Elizabeth, I think that's all I had for the conversation today. I'm going to pause and hand the space back over to you and take any questions.
So now is our time for Q&A, where you can ask any questions, and we have some in the Q&A.
Elizabeth, I don't know if it's me, but I'm having trouble hearing your audio.
Sorry, here we go. I forgot to bring my microphone down. We have some questions in the Q&A. First one is from Adengo Christopher, he asked, what do I need to do to help people who have challenges in adjusting to a new environment? They may be older than you, but here in Uganda, it's so ironical that once you try to correct someone older than you, it's always seen as a disrespect of the old people. What are your thoughts on this one?
That's a tough one because there's a cultural aspect there that I'm a firm believer in respecting. I think, maybe the expectation of correcting someone who's older in North America or Europe is different from Africa. I think that honoring culture is important, and maybe finding a peer who might be able to have that conversation could be a good approach. But I'll pause and see if Ibrahim, I see you came online. Maybe you have some additional insights there.
That's a tough one because I think our parents, so to say, have a sense of cognitive hearing. They just hear what they want to hear, pick that, and just use that. So you would have to look up examples if they're examples in community. Among certain people have done that. If you use an example, so they won't see that that is an attack. And of course, definitely I would agree with Nadia. If you know somebody in the community or somebody who is older than them or the same level with them, and you use that person to be able to talk to them, that is another way to do it. Then perhaps if you could just bring in the conversation, if you just could launch it into a conversation of where you're just being curious, and of course you're bringing in examples of maybe if it's, I don't know, it could be transitioning, it could be in a new job, or it could be in another environment, then trying as much as possible to say that you have to support them, but you also have to know the boundaries because sometimes it can be so much. So yeah, the best possible position would just be able to bring in the elder who is at the same side with them so they can talk to them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have another question from Eddie Shamu. He asked, somebody told me don't always post your wins. Not everyone is rooting for you. I think he said it was just acceptance. I think he means he was just accepted into a climate finance program. So he wants to post this win. He wants to celebrate it. And he says, do you think they are right? Because it's my coping mechanism to help celebrate my wins. Nadia, you're muted. We'll hand it over to Nadia.
Yeah, that's also a tough one, right? I think it depends on what you value most. This is sort of, I keep kind of beating this drum of self-awareness. I think that quote to some degree is right. Yeah, not everyone is happy for you. There are environments that are quite competitive where you have frenemies who want to know just so they can one-up you, you know. So that's absolutely a real part of some of our communities. But I also think it sounds like this person values being able to share their wins. This is maybe a part of how they celebrate for themselves and their families. And maybe I'm sure there are parts of folks who would read that message and are genuinely happy for you. And there are folks who would read it and they're not happy for you. So I think at the end of the day, it's considering, it's realizing that both sets of people will look at it. And are you okay with that? Are you okay with, there are folks on the internet who look at it and say, yes, I'm rooting for this person, and folks would say, you know, who are going to be haters. Are you okay putting yourself out there in that way? Or would you rather keep that to a more close-knit group? It depends on really who you are and what you value the most in that scenario. So it's hard for me to say one or the other. You know, you have to sort of determine what matters most to you in that situation.
Thank you so much. What a wise response. We have, we did another webinar earlier last fall about people boasting wins about work. And we talked about how people go through different phases and cycles in their career. And people post a lot when they're in the high point of their career, not when they're in the low point, but we all go through different phases. We have another question from Amina Mumuni. She asks, how do you carve time to care for yourself when you're going through stress as an employee that needs to attend to work? That's a great question. When work is so stressful and so demanding, how do you find that time for yourself? Nadia, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I can. And then if Ibrahim has some thoughts on that as well.
Thoughts?
I think that is really tough because we can have this ideal of self-care and taking care of yourself and making that room and space. And then we are faced with the reality of what we just have to do. This is your job. It's how you make your living. So you have to show up. And if you don't, it has implications. So that's a tough one. I think sometimes we are not always able to attend to our self-care when we need it in that moment. So let's say in the course of a week, for example, you're feeling drained, you're feeling burnt out, but you have a list of tasks that you still need to get done at work. You know, you still need to get those things done because it's your job. So I think we're not always able to get to it when we want to get to it, but there is that eventually we get to it, right? I suspect that this cycle of always having a task list or being so sort of stressed at work with all these expectations, hopefully isn't going to last forever, that there will be a moment here and there that you can take for yourself. So maybe in that scenario, the goal isn't that I get it here and now every time I need it. And maybe the goal is, let me look for an opportunity of when I can breathe, when I can come up for air and use that opportunity for something that rejuvenates me. So the reality of life is that we don't always get what we need when we need it. But maybe the goal in those scenarios is that eventually that we make an intentional effort to get that thing that we need.
Want to
Ibrahim, I
add
don't know if you...
anything, Ibrahim? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I really love the answers. The first thing that I would say, I'm just writing an article actually about this, and one of the work-related stresses is mostly us as scholars who are coming into this job. You want to show that you perform, and also, you want to put yourself out there, and sometimes that comes actually with your boundaries being stepped over because you want to show that you perform, you want to show that you do this and this, and that can just create an overwhelm for you when you're doing the job. So know what are you capable of doing, and what are you asking? Are you always saying yes at work, and you don't have boundaries? So also prioritize, like, what is the priority right now when you are, of course, when you're on lost energy and in lost calories. What is the priority right now, and what is just being demanded? If it's just projects, then you know that project work can really be overwhelming. So what is the priority? Is it that report? And then you just give yourself, you assign yourself some time. And I would also want to say that if you are an organization, leveraging the people in the organization to know who does what can really help you. So you don't want to be taking something that is related to admin, something that is related to HR, something to your manager. You want to make sure that you know who is responsible for what in a certain organization. I think that one has really helped me in a lot of ways, and also do your research when you are going to these people. I've worked in organizations where they say that we were actually told, before you bring a problem, make sure that you come with a solution, because it makes it easier for everybody. So make sure that you have a list, a solution before you approach anybody, because it makes it easier and also just gives you that leverage. So those are some of the things that I would just put on the tips. And And yeah, if the maybe in terms of your scheduling, if the days you are busy, just make sure that you block off those in the calendar, that you give yourself some time if they can be able to access your car, so that you just put there some relaxation time for yourself.
Thank you so much. I think we have one final question. It's related to this last issue where we have it from Jean-Baptiste. He asks his greatest challenge is always trying to do many things at the same time, but ending up with none of them well done. How do I manage myself to always focus on one thing at a time, or what do you suggest? Thank you.
I think that, and thank you for asking that question, John Baptiste. I think that sort of connects to something I spoke about earlier. I think for folks who are either in leadership positions or folks who, for a good sort of portion of their lives, a lot of is expected out of them. I think a lot of times I meet folks who, because a lot of it is expected out of them, they feel the need to have to rise to the occasion, and have trouble saying no. If someone is looking up to you and they see you as a leader and they value you and you've helped them in the past, then they may have the tendency to always come to you to ask for solutions. And you may feel guilty saying no because you perceive this one who's in need, perceive yourself as someone who's in a position to help them. And that's a noble heart. I think it's a noble position, sort of perspective to have. But what I also find to be true is that even those leaders and those superheroes, the supermen and the superwomen, are also human beings, and also have limitations. And I think sometimes it's difficult to admit first to yourself, right? Have you admitted that to yourself, that it's okay for me to say no? That it's okay for me to say, actually, I would love to help you, but right now I'm drained. I just simply do not have the capacity to do it right now. Perhaps next week, perhaps in a month, but I am just drained. And I think that conversation starts with yourself first internally. If you are not okay admitting where your limitations are, it's going to be incredibly hard for you to admit that to someone else.
Very wise. I think our hour is just about up. We have a couple more questions. Let me ask you, I guess, Nadia, if there's anyone who feels like they would like help with a question or an issue, can they reach out to Solid Minds if they're in a different country, or what do you advise them to do?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, I don't know if there's a Solid Minds email here, or if it's something I can share with you later, Elizabeth, to share. We have a
Okay.
website. You can check us out and see what we do. If you have questions, there's a phone number there and there's an email. You can absolutely reach out, and do our best to address the issue or help connect you to someone who can support you.
That's wonderful. I know Ibram also has a coaching service that he's providing, so people could reach out to Ibrahim. You can put the email or into chat. I can also put it in the job marketplace on the Baobab chat as well. Thank you so much, Nadia and Ibrahim. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for Kelvin and Victorine for helping get our technology set. Everyone, thank you all so much for coming. I hope that was helpful for you.
Beyond the skies, you and I.